Good afternoon. I'm Max Brantley with the Arkansas Times on Thursday, May the 19th. The news in Arkansas today is mostly out at the state capitol. The legislature is in town for what's designed as a three-day special session, supposedly just about highway funding, but the governor has managed to add a dozen or so other wholly unrelated things to the agenda, some of which might make for complications. There are already complications on the highway bill. As you may know, the governor wants to use surplus money and divert some money that had normally gone to other general agencies to pay for highway construction for the next 2 to 3 years. He wants to put off a decision on raising taxes for highways until a popular vote in 2018, when he'll be on the ballot and he won't have to take any responsibility for any tax increases. There's some members of the Senate particularly who think that taxes ought to be discussed now. They think a longer-term solution for highway money is needed. They don't have the votes to pass that this session, but they've held up the governor's highway bill this morning in favor of at least having him put a one-year cap on using surplus money to pay for highways. They don't think that's a good spending plan. I think a lot of people agree with him. Whether they can get enough votes to make him negotiate and compromise remains to be seen. This all may be out of the date by the time you see this video. In fact, in a three-day session, they're going to move pretty quickly. There's good news and bad news at the legislative front. Yesterday, there was a strong movement led by Senator Missy Irvin of Mountain View to introduce legislation that would make it a crime, yes, a crime, make you a sex offender if you used a restroom marked for a gender other than the gender listed on your birth certificate. It's insanity, I think, to put it mildly. I could think of some other words. There's so many circumstances apart from transgender people in which you could make a sex criminal out of somebody who used a restroom with a door label different than what their birth certificate said. Ever seen women take over a men's room when the lines got too long? Think about it. In any event, the governor didn't really want this to get in the way of this legislative session. He didn't want us running to the head of the pack on being embarrassed by our legislature, as North Carolina currently has done. He was able to talk the sponsors of this legislation into standing down, at least for this three-day special session. But these bills and others will be back in January, so that's the bad news. Hidden in the legislative agenda is a lot of other interesting stuff. The governor, Asa Hutchinson, is going to take over the Governor's Mansion Commission. No longer will it be in charge of deciding what can be bought, acquired, or fixed at the mansion. That'll be up to the governor. He's packed it with his people and made it where he can remove anybody he doesn't like. There's also a bill that was nothing more than local legislation. It's meant to help the Nucor Steel Company and also a library in Ron Caldwell's district over in Cross County to be exempted from the state building codes that pertain to earthquake preparation and design. Structural engineers of Arkansas say this is a bad idea, but it looks like this thing maybe agrees. It's local legislation. I think if we need lesser earthquake design standards, we ought to consider that in the fullness of time with some real scientific testimony, not pick and choose who should be benefited by. The governor's also going to take over the History Commission, do away with its powers and place its entire operations under the sole control of the Director of the Department of Arkansas Heritage. That's currently Stacey Hurst, whose training is as a part owner of a flower shop. The death penalty is on the subject of the Arkansas Supreme Court today. Oral arguments were held. The state wants to be allowed to proceed with executions. Attorneys for death row inmates say the state must deliver on promises in a 2013 contract to reveal information about the sources of the drugs used to make sure that they don't cause cruel punishment, as the Constitution prohibits when they're used in lethal injections. Some of these drugs are about to expire as to use anyway. I don't think we're going to see an execution in the short run in Arkansas, but the Supreme Court's questioning this morning, I think, on balance, tended to favor the state, which is not unusual. They've become very legislature friendly. Yesterday, we got the results of a poll done by a public interest group about attitudes in Arkansas towards stronger campaign finance legislation and stronger ethics legislation. There's overwhelming support for it. This is to lay the groundwork for a potential constitutional amendment to improve those laws, to have more transparency and make it harder to line the pockets of legislators with money. The problem is that Leslie Rutledge, the Attorney General, is standing in the way of approval of the constitutional amendment for the ballot. A lawsuit has been filed over that. Does all this make you want to stick your head in your sand? Well, here's a good piece of news. The Little Rock Zoo has 4 new female ostriches. Go out and watch them dig in the dirt. They don't actually stick their heads in the sand, Google tells me, but they sometimes dig down there to hide their eggs, I think. Or so they say, if you can believe Google. If you can't believe them, who can you believe? I'm Max Brantley. I'll be back tomorrow.